The We Knew the Moon podcast is now the official podcast of the Goddess Temple Twickenham. Find out more on their website, www.goddesstempletwickenham.org, or find the Goddess Temple Twickenham on Facebook and Instagram. You're listening to We Knew the Moon with Dee Safier, an empath who started a podcast to explore the universe, spirituality, and all things witchy woo-woo. Don't forget to check out the website wenewthemoon.co.uk for all your I do what I want and the moon made me do it merch, whichever excuse you prefer to use for all of your life choices. Hi, my name is Dee, and this is the We Knew the Moon podcast, and I'm super excited to introduce Sareta Fontaine today. Hi, Sareta.
Hi.
So Sareta is a writer, a podcaster herself, and a content creator. And she is a former award-winning mummy blogger that rebranded to align with her authentic creative self. And she's here with us. And also, full disclaimer, longtime friend of mine. Love you.
Love you too.
We met when you, I was going to say got involved, but that sounds dodgy. But you started seeing a friend of mine and eventually married him. And yeah, now we're friends.
Yeah.
Basically, the sole purpose of Danny on this earth was to bring you and I together. And he did that. And he did that well. Oh, and also to help with the creation of your beautiful children.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about them.
Yeah, I know. But they're adorable.
Thank you.
So we've got you now for 2 episodes, as is the usual format. And I'm so excited because I feel like never have I picked a subject to present to a guest that's better suited for my guest.
Oh, I'm so excited.
So for a bit of context, Sareta, you're a big horror movie fan, right?
Yes, I am.
Right?
Yes, I am.
And I'm a big fan of when things pop up, the same kind of archetype, trope, story pops up in different religions and beliefs. I love that. So this, I think, combines both of our fascinations. And the topic I'm going to be presenting to you today is...
What is it?
Exorcisms.
Ooh. Okay, that is actually quite cool.
That's exciting, isn't it?
That's cool. That's cool.
I know.
Okay, love it.
Whew. Okay, so what do you think when you think of exorcisms?
Well, naturally, being a fan of horror movies, I think of The Exorcist.
Right.
I didn't watch that film when I was younger. It
Good.
was something that I watched. Well, do you know?
Probably for the best.
I watched a lot of horror movies as a kid. I was one of those kids that would be like, ooh, on Channel 4, there's going to be Nightmare on Elm Street. Let's record it and then watch it around a friend's house and then be scared on the way home. But The Exorcist, yeah, I watched it as an adult. So I didn't really find it scary. But what springs to mind is, you know, the original Exorcism. Yeah. But then there have been a few films like The Exorcism of Emily Rose and all of those ones, which are far scarier.
Things like The Exorcist and all those films, right? We were just talking about it before we pressed record. They almost seem like campy now and like a bit jokey, but at the time they were these crazy new special effects and really freaky. And especially if you managed to sneak and watch them as a kid. Like I remember my first horror film that I watched.
Ooh, what was it?
Amityville Horror.
That was your first?
Yeah.
The original? Or...
Yeah, the original.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, the original. And it's because I had just got a TV in my room and I'd stayed up late one night and watched it. It came on at like 2 a.m. And I didn't even watch the whole of it because I think I fell asleep. But that was my introduction into horror films. And again, if you watch the original now, you're like, is it scary? But under the blanket, hoping your mum doesn't catch you watching TV in the middle of the night, you know.
Yeah.
Well, for me, when I think of exorcisms, I also think of The Exorcist, but I also think of all the, you know, the creepy exorcism rituals and practices and basically borderline abuse that you have in like the church. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Because any type of excuse, like any misbehavior, or I think back in the day, it was like mental health issues. It's like, well, you've obviously got a demon, so we're going to lock you away, strap you to a bed and get the demons, cast the demons out. Right,
exactly. Ugh. So the thing that really hit me was that I was doing some research on exorcism, and basically it pops up in almost every religion. And I didn't cover all of them, obviously, but pops up all over the shop. So almost every culture, religion, whatever, has some kind of ritual or practice or belief that you can be possessed by something evil. I suppose they're not that concerned if you're possessed by a good spirit, because either they don't notice or they're like, she's nicer now, let's keep the demon. So let me start with a definition of what exorcisms are, okay?
Yes, please.
So it's a religious or spiritual practice of evicting demons, jinns, spirits, spiritual entities from a person, or in the case of Amityville Horror, from a place like a house or a building or whatever that is believed to be possessed. So a lot of these rituals and practices usually involve some kind of swearing of an oath, command, or some kind of prayer or reciting from a holy text or whatever. They were used to be far more common, but between the 60s and the 70s in the United States, there was a 50% increase in exorcisms. Now, I have a little theory about this based off of the last couple of episodes on like cults and Satanism and so forth. I think that time, do you remember that when we were little? We didn't live in the States at the time, but there was this satanic panic where everyone's worried about Satanists. Cults were really, really, I wouldn't say trendy, but you had the Manson family in 67 and you had Jonestown and Waco and all those things. So I think that perhaps people were on high alert for these satanic influences and demonic influences, and maybe that contributed a bit or gave legitimacy to doing these exorcisms.
Plus, around that time, it was kind of a time like where some people started being a bit more open, a bit more free, doing what they want. And I guess a way to make you conform or to control would be like, you're doing wrong. No, you are obviously possessed. So now we're going to make you listen to us again.
And that's sadly a constant theme in exorcisms. It's like, I don't like what you're doing or how you think. So you must be possessed and I'm going to punish you by exorcising you until you just break and conform. So what I wanted to do is go through some of the religions and their beliefs on possession and exorcisms.
Ooh, fantastic.
I want to manage your expectations. I didn't cover voodoo in this because I had a whole episode on voodoo and we covered this a little bit there. But I've gone through some of the other mainstream religions, which I was quite surprised and shocked either that they believed in possession or that they had exorcism rituals. Because started with Buddhism. Not a religion you associate with exorcisms and demonic possession?
No,
but they are quite chill about it. If you were a Buddhist and you were possessed and you wanted to have an exorcism, or your community deemed it necessary for you to have an exorcism, because they're not always consensual, they would recite religious texts around you. You can even like preempt getting possessed by reciting religious texts. And there's one text that's particularly good, apparently, if you recite it, it's particularly effective in exorcising your demons. And FYI, it's called Atanatiya Sutta. Like, they make it sound really easy, huh?
I mean, kind of. Not for me, who struggles with, well, I don't read a lot. So yeah, that.
So apart from the reading.
I'd probably get it wrong and summon a demon.
But you're not going to make a Hollywood blockbuster out of that exorcism, are you? Like,
no.
Someone just reading a book. Sinhalese Buddhists, so Buddhists that are based in Sri Lanka, they have a ritual called Yak Tovil to invoke Buddha and the deity Suniyam to protect against dangerous supernatural forces.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so that just sounds kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
But again, I don't know much about Buddhism, but clearly. But I didn't know that they were preoccupied with supernatural forces so much so that they had like rituals for them. But this ritual just sounds really nice and harmless because it's an elaborate ritual, but it involves filling up baskets with lots of different things, like a sacrificed chicken and so forth, and just passing the basket around. Apart from the chicken, it's fairly, harmless. Now, I did love the Tibetan Buddhist practice, because it sounded like a really lovely New Year practice. It's celebrated on the 29th day of the 12th month of the Tibetan calendar. So it's the same day every year. And it's basically the exorcising ghost day. And you use this day to drive out all negativity, including your evil spirits and misfortunes of the past year. And you start the new day and the new year with peace and prosperity. So what you do on this day is you have a proper clean of your house, you decorate your homes, and you have dance parties.
That sounds really awesome. Can we not adopt this?
I could get on board with that, right? It's basically like a spring clean, right? We're starting afresh. It's New Year.
Yeah.
So I quite like that one.
So, when you were saying this would never be a Hollywood blockbuster or anything like that, as you were saying it, memory, have you ever seen The Golden Child?
No.
Oh my.
I'm writing it down.
The Golden Child. It's an 80s movie. Eddie Murphy. And I do think they were Buddhists. Basically, a little Buddhist kid gets kidnapped and there are rituals. And I do remember a chicken in a cage of some description. And I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I think you should watch this because I think they must have based that on.
Oh, how fun. I'm going to watch that for research purposes. So the next religion I looked at was Hinduism. Again, I'm ignorant, so I didn't think of this. I guess that's more believable to me that they would have exorcisms because they've got lots of gods and some of them are like a little bit more naughty than others and stuff.
Yeah.
I can imagine some of their spirits possessing people. So Hinduism, they've got 4 holy books called Vedas, and one of the holy books contains information about exorcisms and magic and alchemy. That would be our favorite Veda, wouldn't it? But again, their exorcisms seem pretty harmless. Exorcisms basically involve chanting mantras and reading scriptures and praying. Pretty chill.
Very PC, not trying to destroy your life.
If someone came up to you and they said, I'm going to do a Hindu exorcism on you, you wouldn't freak out. You'd be like, all right, I mean, sure.
Yeah, I'd be like, babes, bring some incense. Let's
do
have
this.
some chill. Yeah. I'm going to come out smelling nice. It's going to be very tranquil.
Yeah, sounds nice. Then we're moving on to Islam. Exorcism in Islam involves chanting verses of the Quran, sprinkling holy water. And in Islam, holy water is water that has come from the Zamzam well, which is in Mecca. So, in Christianity, holy water is blessed by a priest or bishop or so forth.
Holy water can just be from anywhere, can't it?
And tap water, basically.
But this, but Mecca, and it's coming from Mecca. It's all natural.
And I recently, obviously, went with you to Glastonbury, and we got water from the Chalice well, which I'm holding up now because this is the bottle I'm using in my oil diffuser. So we're all on board with our special waters. We like that, huh? So sometimes in Islam, during an exorcism, the call for daily prayer is used. And you've been to Morocco, right? So you've heard.
Yes.
It's lovely.
Oh, yes, I have. It's amazing. It's
5 times a day.
Yeah, and you can hear it around.
I'm Palestinian, as we know. My family are originally Christian. I'm not Christian, but, we're Christian descent rather than Muslim descent. But the Palestinian people are mostly Muslim. So when I go home, there's a lot of the call to prayer, and I love it. When you've got like someone who's actually got a lovely voice doing the call to prayer, it's lovely because, you hear it from a few towers usually because they're all doing it at the same time. And it's just lovely. Anyone that spent any time in the Middle East will recognize that sound.
I like it. I think we could do a bit of that 5 times a day, just saying nice things.
Yeah, or just give yourself 5 minutes, 5 times a day to just sit with your own thoughts and just relax a bit. Don't do work. Don't look at a computer screen or phone, and just sit and just have a quiet moment 5 times a day. Whether you pray to whatever god or goddess or whatever, it's up to you, but just take some time to chill for a minute. But again, it seems very chill, and I'm sure there's exceptions to every rule, but the party line in Islam is that you do these chanting of verses from the Quran, the call to prayer. And basically the call to prayer is used in exorcisms because it's thought to repel non-angelic unseen beings.
So basically get rid of ghosts. I love it. Who doesn't want to get rid of evil ghosts?
Well, let the angelic unseen beings come. Yeah, please flock to me.
We can have a chat. Definitely.
So then moving on to Judaism, we're getting a little darker here, not going to lie, because there's some reports of using poisonous root extracts and making sacrifices to perform exorcisms.
So that's when they want to make you throw up the demon.
Probably.
Get it out of your body.
And when I say making sacrifices, I don't mean human sacrifices, obviously. In the early 1900s, there was a rabbi called Rabbi Yehuda Fitaya, and he described the exorcisms. And he said, a rabbi must be present And 10 men must be also present who circle the possessed person. So that's getting a little bit intimidating, isn't it? Like if you were the possessed person. And then the group recites Psalm 91 3 times. And then the rabbi blows a shofar, which is a ram's horn, so that the possessing force will be shaken loose. And then once the spirit is loose, the rabbi will start talking to it and asking it, why are you possessing this body? What do you want? And then asking it to leave.
Okay, well, that's quite nice.
Better.
They're actually being like trying to get to the root of the issue here. Like, what is your issue? What do you want? Maybe we can try and solve it for you. But if not, get on your bike, get out. No room for you.
So it's kind of nice, like they're brokering an arrangement with the spirit. I don't know. Then we've got Taoism and Chinese folk religion. And here they had an interesting belief that you are possessed by a spirit for one of two reasons. Either you disturbed a ghost and now the ghost wants revenge, or a living person could be using black magic on you, conjuring a ghost to possess you.
Well, to be fair, those are the most two believable, most realistic reasons. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just like, I was minding my business and then you decided to invade me. Yeah. I didn't ask this. But yeah, if you're going to disturb, I can kind of understand that.
I feel like I want to add a number 3, though, and that's that you pissed off someone while they were alive. And so when they die, they want revenge.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does it?
That makes sense.
But yeah.
No, it does. It does.
So in this Chinese folk belief, a fashi, which is a Chinese priest, can perform a ritual required for exorcism, which again, it involves chanting and praying. That would be a mild annoyance if people were chanting and praying on you constantly, but not going to break you, is it? Or like ruin your life.
In the background, like whilst you're doing your podcast. Sorry, guys, just got some people trying to get this demon out of me, but we're going to carry on. Just keep on going.
Awkward PTA meetings and, going to the dentist. Well, now I want to move on to Christianity, and spoiler alert, Christians are less chill about exorcisms.
Well, we kind of know that. I kind of feel like I know where this is going. It's going to be very intense, very hardcore.
I meant to ask you, I know you're not religious, but what is your religious background, out of curiosity?
My religious background, so I am Christian. Church of England. So it's Christian with a sprinkle of Henry VIII wanting to divorce his wives. That's how I always describe it.
As a Roman Catholic, I was going to say, so fake Christian then.
Oh, here we go. I guess my experiences with churches were always positive, and I kind of like going to church. So when I was younger, my best friend in primary school, her dad was a pastor. So they actually had their own church. So on a Sunday, I got to go hang out with my best friend at her dad's church. And it wasn't a Church of England. I don't know what denomination it was, but it was very happy. It was very like they had guitars and it's like, I love you, Jesus, and clapping, that kind of thing.
Singing.
And it was very community and family orientated, which I've always loved. Yeah. So in terms of my experiences, it's always been positive. Let's be nice to each other. Let's love each other. It was never forced kind of, you have to do this and strict rules. So I kind of liked it. And I'm not going to say that I'm not Christian, because I do believe in some things like be good to each other. I'm realistic with it. There's some things that have been placed in the Bible and things by man.
And specifically men.
Yeah. So like a sense of control, basically, and certain rules that just don't make sense. Not like Henry VIII. I don't want to say that. I take elements that I align with.
We do what we want is the motto of this podcast. We do what we want. Well, I just thought it'd be interesting before we start dissing the Christians that we are technically Christian here, so we can say what we want. Don't at us. So basically, in Christianity, and as we know, there's lots of different branches, and I'll go into some, but on the whole, an exorcism is performed by someone from within the church, a priest, a bishop, depends how severe the possession is, right? So Usually an exorcism will use prayers, gestures, even amulets and icons, and will invoke God and Jesus, maybe some angels, maybe some saints. But here there's a really important definition and distinction about possession and exorcism. So this is what Christians technically believe, that the person being possessed is in themselves. They are not evil because they're being possessed. It's not their actions. It's the actions and the words or whatever of this possessed spirit. So an exorcism is to be thought of as a cure, not a punishment. So that's a very important distinction to bear in mind. So they think they are curing someone for being possessed rather than punishing someone for doing these evil actions.
Right.
It sounds lovely until you think a bit deeper into how it's been used, i.e., if you don't like what someone's saying, then they must be possessed. So I'm going to cure you of that wicked thought, oh, you're gay, you're possessed, I'm going to cure you of that gayness.
Yeah, this is where the notion of man getting involved and putting their own spin on things, because it's like, well, it doesn't actually say that, and you've just made your own interpretation, and now you're just using that because you don't like gay people, or you don't like that lady down the road who said that this is going to happen because I saw it in some water.
What quite often happens, oh, you've got a difficult teenager who's being a bit like rebellious. Oh, must be possessed. It's like, no, they're just having a tantrum because they're 14, because they're a 14-year-old girl. It happens, doesn't it? Yeah, because the possessed person is being unwillingly manipulated in the most case. Most of the time, these possessions are not consensual. You have a couple of cases that I've read about where someone's like, I'm possessed, please help me. But most of the time, the people around you decide that you are possessed and you need to be exorcised. Because the possessed person is being unwillingly manipulated by the spirit and is a victim of possession, the mainstream view of exorcisms is that there should be no violence towards the person. So in an exorcism, there should be no violence. That is one of the rules of Christian exorcisms, right? Except for maybe being tied down if the person themselves are being violent, so they can be restrained. Again, it's like alarm bells are ringing because all of this is kind of subjective, isn't it? Oh, I think he's going to be violent to me. Better restrain him. Do you know the verse from the Bible, John 3:16? It's like one of the most famous ones. I mean, I remember growing up, there was like graffiti of it and stuff. So John 3:16 is the quote that says, "For God loved so the world that he gave his one and only son."
Okay.
What I thought interesting was if you read a few more verses down, John 13:27 is much less loving because it talks about Judas being possessed by Satan. As soon as Judas took the bread, Satan entered into him.
Right.
When you read the sort of verses around it, basically, Judas wanted to be possessed by the devil, so he allowed the devil to possess him.
Oh.
This is a slightly different take on what I just said earlier about people not choosing to be possessed. This is a verse in the Bible that's saying that you can actually want to be possessed. You can make a deal with the devil or with an evil spirit.
Which, again, does make sense if there's loads of films like that where there's always the baddie and they're like, I want to be more powerful and I want to sit with the devil because he's going to take over the world. So I'll be on his side. So let me just, get the demons to make me strong. This is like, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely.
Right.
But also, this is the verse from the Bible. You know how man loves taking a verse from a Bible to prove their point and twisting it and then using it to dominate over others. That's the verse in the Bible that people use when they want to prove, in quotation marks, that if you are possessed by an evil spirit, you're probably not innocent. You probably wanted to be possessed. And therefore, all those other rules about not using violence and treating it as a cure, not a punishment, out the window because this person chose to be possessed. So they're evil, as well as being possessed by an evil spirit. I'm going to start with the Catholic Church. Like I said, my family are Catholic on both sides. Neither of my parents are religious. And my mom's side of the family is not religious at all. And on my dad's side, I had a couple of members, people who are religious. I don't like being told what to do. I don't like rules. I don't like having to do everything, certain things at certain times of day. That's the biggest problem, if I'm honest. Anyway, so Catholics always have like a bad rep, though, of doing everything super intense, right? This is why Henry VIII was like, I'm going to make an easier version. And exorcisms are no different. In the Catholic Church, there are actually two different types of exorcism. There's the major exorcisms and minor exorcisms. So a major exorcism, also called a formal exorcism or a solemn exorcism, can only be performed during a baptism or with permission of a bishop. A minor exorcism is also called prayers of deliverance and can be said by anyone, is often said in mass and so forth. So a major exorcism uses the Rituale Romanum, where it lists guidelines for conducting the exorcism, and priests are instructed to make sure, this I think is a key point, they're instructed to make sure there's no psychological or physical illness causing the possessed behavior. So they're meant to check with a doctor, like, is this person, do they have some kind of physical condition or do they have mental health issues?
Good.
That is good. I mean, it sounds enlightened because they're not fucking doctors. So, you know, it's nice that they've acknowledged, no, we're not doctors. We better check with an actual one. During an exorcism, the priest will invoke God, Jesus, recite from the Bible, use holy water, etc., etc. But sometimes several weekly exorcisms over many years may be required if the demon is, in quotation marks, deeply entrenched. So I thought that this definitely sounds like a way of breaking someone's willful personality, right? Like, you could totally see how someone at the end would be like, fine, I'll stop fucking men if you just stop chanting over me.
Well, to be fair, the demon would probably get very tired of hearing this as well. It's like, oh, I thought this was going to be easy. Do you know what? Just taking over the world or taking over this person, I just can't be bothered. So yeah, I'm going to go now. Thanks, guys.
You guys can't even sing. This is noise torture.
Yeah.
So Pope Leo X wrote a prayer for this. He wrote St. Michael's Prayer against Satan and Rebellious Angels. And I did write here in my notes, Satan and the Rebellious Angels is a great band name. Don't you think?
It
is. So shall I read you the prayer? This is specifically to protect you against being possessed and help you if you are possessed. St. Michael the Archangel, defend us in the day of battle. Be our safeguard against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast into hell Satan and all evil spirits who wander through the world, seeking for the ruin of souls. Amen.
Amen. That's so like powerful as well. It's just like, it's all those words that you can't really ignore. And it's just like,
Did you feel something leave your body, Sareta? Or
well, I'm not possessed today. So.
No. All right. So now we're moving on, still under the umbrella of Christianity, but we're looking at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormons.
Oh, I like the Mormons. They're so
Mormons.
Cute. I always talk to the Mormons. They're always teenage boys on the high street. That sounds really bad. Not teenage boys, but young boys who are just haven't had life, and they stop you. And I'm like, I will have a chat with you. You're so cute. We'll talk, but I'm not going to give you a little
win. Yeah. Do you know there was a house on the street parallel to mine where they live? Because they have to go away for a year to do this missionary work, right? Where they talk to you in the street and they come to your house. And so they must have had like just accommodation. There was a couple of, and they're always in pairs, aren't they? There was a couple of pairs that lived in this house, but they moved out and someone else moved in. And this person has like a bit of a fancy car, I don't know what, but, you know, like a little boy racer car with a license plate that says hot sex. What a change of vibe for that accommodation.
I bet the landlord was well pleased. Like, they're going to look after the house. It's going to be fine.
Although I would be like, Mormon or not, we're talking about a bunch of 18-year-old boys who've never lived on their own before. So are they going to be able to look after the place? But they would learn and God would show them the way. Anyway, so exorcisms are far less common amongst Mormons. They're not so much a thing. I talk about Mormons a lot in the episode on cults. So if you want to learn more about Mormons, listen to that episode. But they did have two clear methods for performing them. One of them was anointing with consecrated oil. I had that done in my confirmation, where they do a little cross on your forehead with oil, and laying on hands, followed by a blessing and command for the spirit to leave. So in typical Mormon fashion, very politely, excuse me, Mr. Spirit, will you please leave this body? Which I thought was very sweet. But the more common method is raising the hand to the square and then commanding the spirit away in the name of Jesus Christ. So I was like, what the fuck is
What's a square?
raising the hand to the square? You haven't heard of that either, huh?
No,
I never heard of it.
What's the square?
Maybe because we're not Mormons, but basically,
True.
I Googled, if you raise an arm to the square or you raise your hands to the square, then your arm has to represent two sides of the square, which means it will be at a 90-degree angle. And it indicates truthfulness, honesty, candor, and frankness. So you're basically doing this.
That's like the surrender. I surrender.
Yeah. Or like holding your hands up in...
Yeah, like if a police was gonna, you'd be like, well, I surrender, I've got nothing on me. This is, okay, maybe it stems from there.
Yeah. But then I found out about something super creepy. Do you want to hear about this? It's creepy/amazing.
Of course.
There is an international body called the International Association of Exorcists.
Okay, so where is that and when can we go?
I know, right? Well, surprise, surprise, it's a Roman Catholic institution, because they seem to be one of the branches that is most preoccupied with exorcisms and possessions. But let me just ask you, right? Because I was shocked by this, and I've never thought about this, but when I learned it, I was shocked. The International Association of Exorcists, when do you think it was founded?
Well, I'm going to go with what you were saying before, around the 60s, 70s.
So I don't know whether I thought it was going to be like the 1700s or something, but it was actually founded in 1990.
Oh, well.
For you and me approaching 40, the 90s is 5 minutes ago. So it just feels super modern and recent. That's how much they're still on board with this exorcism belief, is that they're still forming new international associations of exorcists.
What was going on in 1990 that they felt that they needed to make a whole thing?
Well, again, I wonder if it's like off the back of satanic panic during the 70s and 80s and all the cults and again, people living much more free lives, people being able to be more openly gay, you know, not having to get married to live together. I mean, all these things that they probably see as awful that we think are fabulous, but they probably think is like the demise of society as a whole. So I wonder if it's that, set up by 6 priests. And it was finally approved by the Roman Catholic Church only in 2014. So how recent is that? By the year 2000, there's already over 200 members, and the year 2000 being 22 years ago now. So there's probably way more. They meet biannually. Now, I needed help with this. Biannually, I always get confused. Does that mean twice a year or every 2 years?
Biannually, I think that's twice a year, isn't it?
Hey, Google, what does biannually mean?
Occurring twice a year.
Okay, cool. That's my co-host, Google. But that's even more weird. They meet twice a year. You and I barely meet twice a year.
They must have a lot of information during that twice a year, surely.
But they also produce a quarterly newsletter where people can talk about their difficult and interesting cases. Now, I have to admit, I searched long and hard for a copy of this quarterly newsletter because I think it would just be such a great read. I couldn't find one. I was just hoping one of these priests has leaked a copy.
No, they're taking their newsletters very seriously. It's probably heavily locked in some kind of formal email thing. Oh,
it's probably a scroll that gets mailed by mail pigeon. I don't know.
Maybe it's not even on the internet. That's the thing. Maybe they actually print this and send it to their house, recorded delivery.
Who knows? If anyone has a copy of one of these quarterly newsletters from the International Association of Exorcists, please send them forward because we would love to have a look at that.
Yeah, I need to read that.
I know. I just want to see like the pictures and it would just be amazing.
And to be fair, it could be, as a writer, a new screenplay waiting to happen. Netflix.
Yeah. And again, they do state very clearly that patient/possessed person should be examined by doctors and psychiatrists before having an exorcism. So hopefully that is adhered to strictly in every case.
Good.
Yeah. So this is when I kind of went a little bit dark and I looked into a little bit about gay conversion, which is also known as gay exorcisms.
Oh, so it does actually go into the realms of exorcism conversion.
Yeah, because... And again, there's different beliefs, but one of the most common beliefs in these people that do these therapies is that you have been possessed by, sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but you've been possessed by a homosexual spirit.
There are okay. So okay. Back up. Let's rewind. If there are homosexual demons and spirits, why can we not have homosexual people? Where did these spirits come from? I know. It makes no sense.
It doesn't. It's so ridiculous. I mean, every part of this is just horrendous, you know. And I forgot this, the full disclaimer, top of the show. I don't believe in any of these exorcisms, FYI. It's just really sad, isn't it? It's just really sad. And these gay conversion therapies or these gay exorcisms, they still happen today. I mean, I remember watching an episode of the recent Drag Race. You're going to watch this, it's not a spoiler, but one of them said that his family are religious and he went through this and he's like our age, you know?
Oh my gosh, that must be so horrific.
So yeah, apparently there's these homosexual demons and they possess people and that's what makes them gay. So you have to remove this spirit to remove the homosexuality. And this is sadly very common still in some churches. And the thing is, like, even if these exorcisms are harmless or non-violent, I should say, because I don't think they're harmless, to be told that your natural urges are actually an evil demon, how damaging is that? That is mental abuse, isn't it?
Yeah, that's enough to fuck you up because you're like, so my brain is wrong.
Yeah. But the sad thing is that many of these exorcisms do involve some kind of violence. So it's just awful, isn't it? There was a case in 2009. So again, super recent. This is obviously one of the most extreme cases, but in Connecticut, it was recorded on video. A 16-year-old boy was beaten in a church for 20 minutes by a group of church leaders acting as exorcists, shouting sacraments in quotation marks. So, you know, religious phrases such as "pray out the gay" and "foul queer be not here." This video was later released on YouTube.
Oh my God.
That's a really extreme case, but just to say that these things often go unregulated. They're within close-knit communities. So even if you don't agree with what your church is doing to these people or to yourself, it's very difficult to break out of that mold and that community and speak out against it. It's just awful. Had to touch on that because that is sadly something that is very current. I always say I love when science and woo-woo meet. In this case, they don't, because when I tried to find like scientific explanations or the scientific perspective on exorcisms, there's basically no scientific proof that exorcisms are a thing that work or that demonic possession is a thing. Surprise, surprise. Demonic possession is not a medical or psychological diagnosis. What used to be called possession in the past may have been cases of things like Tourette's or epilepsy or schizophrenia or other mental health issues. There were some cases of patients themselves thinking that they were possessed by a demon, and that is a psychological issue in itself. But these were often treated with placebos and powers of suggestion. So they might have even had a fake exorcism to convince these people that this demon that they thought they were possessed by had left their body. But sadly, in the UK, as I mentioned, in the US, they saw a sharp increase in the 60s and 70s. But in the UK, exorcisms are on the rise. And it is supposedly because of new branches of churches, which again, please refer to my cult episode where I talk about new religious movements and cults and the links. And sadly, when the victim of an exorcism has mental health issues and they're on medication, quite often as part of the exorcism, they're told to stop their medication.
No.
Yeah. So this to me tells me
would
make them worse, which then goes to, in quotation marks, prove their point that you're definitely possessed. If the demon is reacting to the exorcisms. But this proves to me that that rule of always being examined by a psychiatrist or doctor is not being adhered to. And even if it is at the beginning of the exorcism, there might not be following the medical advice throughout the process. So I wanted to talk to you about some notable exorcisms and exorcists.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And you might recognize some of these.
Oh, okay. This is where it's even more fun.
Yeah. So in 1947, there were claims that Salvador Dali received an exorcism from an Italian friar while he was in France.
What did he do? Why did they think he was possessed?
Well, probably because they looked at his art or his self. But I kind of feel like because Salvador Dali was so off the wall, I kind of feel like maybe he was like, oh, I would love to experience an exorcism. Do one for me.
True. I'm kind of thinking that I wouldn't, not the hardcore, but it's like, if you think there's any kind of tiny little demon that's trying to get in somehow, just give me some kind of blessing. Get him out, get him out.
Yeah. This one's, I don't know, did it surprise me? Yeah, it did. Mother Teresa allegedly underwent an exorcism later in life because she was having trouble sleeping and she feared that she might be under the attack of the evil one.
Fair enough. I guess he would try, they would try to disrupt your sleep because it's like quite cantankerous.
If something's bothering your sleep, you'd be tempted to try anything, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Insomnia is a bitch. In 2005, so again, how fucking recent is that? There was a case where a mentally ill Romanian nun was killed during an exorcism by the priest that was performing it.
Gosh, how was she killed? Like stake through the heart or something?
I actually don't have more information about that, but it's so sad. It's just so sad. Okay, so now I'm going to go into a little bit of a deep dive into 3 different cases that really caught me and my attention, let's say. So the first one is Clara Germana Selly. Now I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right, but we'll call her Clara. Now Clara was from South Africa. From Natal in South Africa, and she was an orphan. They described her in the things I read as African origin. So I take that to mean that she was Black in racist South Africa. When she was a schoolgirl of 16, which I don't know if you were the same, but 16 was like me at my worst. I was a bitch. I was a nightmare. Like my poor parents, I still regularly apologize to them for my teenage years, you know?
That's so cute.
But she's 16 at this time, and she confesses. By the way, she was born in 1890, so she was 16 in 1906. So in 1906, when she's 16, she confessed to making a pact with the devil to her confessor, Father Horner Erasmus. So again, that name, Horner Erasmus, I take it to mean that he's a white male in racist South Africa and a missionary during that time as well. According to a nun as well, she knew languages like Polish, German, French, Norwegian, so languages that she wouldn't have been taught.
Oh.
And this is creepy. She knew people's sins even if she hadn't met them before.
So that just sounds like special powers that I would want to keep.
I know, right? She apparently, sorry, I'm trying not to laugh, but listen to this. She also had supernatural strength and would beat up the nuns.
Oh, okay.
And was quite often reported to be making these inhuman sounds. One quote here, "No animal ever made such sounds, neither the lions of East Africa nor the angry bulls."
So she had range like Mariah. Okay.
It was even claimed by some of the nuns that she could levitate and that she needed to be sprinkled with holy water to come out of these states of satanic possession. Now, I've put here, was she just having tantrums? Was she just, a bratty teenager? She was an orphan. She clearly, growing up in a mission. So she clearly didn't have the easiest of starts in life.
Not even bratty, just like really fed up with her situation of all these people telling her what to do. And she just wanted to live her life and get out.
Right? So who knows? But they performed a 2-day exorcism. And during the exorcism, she knocked the Bible out of the priest's hands and tried to choke him with his robes.
Because she's trying to get out of the situation, trying to survive. Like, I'm so done with this shit.
Exactly. But apparently after 2 days of exorcism, she was healed. But like, fuck knows what that entailed. Like that poor girl, she might have been like, yeah, look, I'll behave. Just don't ever do this shit to me again. Now, this is where it got really sad. So apparently she was very embarrassed by her behavior. But again, I'm embarrassed by my teenage behavior too. That's just being more mature, right? Growing. But sadly, she basically died several years later at age 22. It's just such a sad story. I mean, from start to finish, this girl clearly had a difficult life, living in a difficult situation in a difficult country at the time. Clearly had health issues. If she died at 22 from heart failure.
Oh, it was heart failure.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
So just horrendous, isn't it? So this one, The Exorcism of Roland Doe.
Ooh, okay.
This happened in the 1940s. In my mind, this is still recent, even though it's the last 100 years, okay? Roman Catholic priests performed exorcisms on an anonymous boy who went under the pseudonym of Roland Doe or Robbie Mannheim. So I'm going to call him Roland. There were suspicions of who he was for real, but he was anonymous. He was 14 at the time of being possessed by a demon. And apparently there were 49 people bearing witness to the exorcisms. 49 people there, yeah. And it's weird because basically the newspaper asked the Father Halloran, who was one of the ones in charge of the exorcisms, if they could verify that the boy had actually been demonically possessed. And this is the father's fucking typical politician answer about whether this boy's possessed. He says, "No, I can't go on record. I never made an absolute statement about the things because I didn't feel I was qualified."
So who took him there?
Right? So here's the background story. Apparently, Roland's aunt got him to try a Ouija board once upon a time. Yeah, which was obviously very frowned upon. And when she died, apparently they started having ghostly visits and noises and furniture moving and things flying off shelves. And things would float near Roland. So I don't know whether they thought that, like, because he'd tried the Ouija board with his clearly eccentric aunt, whether she was haunting him or possessing him, or whether he'd brought in a ghostly spirit. So the family asked a priest to intervene. And the priest started performing exorcisms. During one of these exorcisms, the boy apparently escaped his restraints and attacked one of the priests. But like, you fucking would, wouldn't you? Someone restrains you and starts chanting over you for God knows how long. If you could escape, he probably had like little tiny wrists, you know?
Yeah, you would
like
want to get
14-year-old
out.
boy. Other priests apparently witnessed the bed shaking during the exorcisms. It's like, no shit, he's probably struggling and trying to get away, right? And they heard the boy speaking Latin.
Latin.
Yeah, but it's like now it's believed that he was just disturbed, not possessed, and that he was copying the Latin he heard in church. And it's now basically a popular belief that the story was completely made up. But here's the bit that you might like. This case was the basis on what The Exorcist was based on.
Okay, so it's an actual...
Yeah,
okay,
so
they based it on actual... Oh, that's why they always say based on actual events.
Yeah.
So then, like, some of it was true.
Yeah.
Like the actions of people.
Yeah. And obviously it's going to throw you a bit that Roland is a boy and in The Exorcist it's a girl. But yeah, that's where they clearly got the idea from. Now this one was bonkers. Anneliese Michel. She was born in 1952 in Bavaria, West Germany. So again, this is a very difficult environment. We're talking about West Germany fairly soon after the war, before the Berlin Wall fell. So West Germany was it was really quite a difficult place to grow up in. She was diagnosed with epileptic psychosis and had a history of psychiatric treatment. So already we know that this girl has got mental health issues. When she was 16, she had a seizure and then was diagnosed with this temporal lobe epilepsy. And she was also later diagnosed with depression. So this poor girl, by the age of 20, she could no longer bear religious objects and she started hearing voices. She was treated at a psychiatric hospital, but clearly whatever they were doing with her was not working. And obviously we're talking now about the 60s. They don't know as much as we know now. They weren't always treating people with mental health issues in the kindest way. So she was getting treatment. It wasn't working. Her situation was getting worse and worse, and she became suicidal. She was religious, and so her and her family started believing that she was possessed. So they approached the Catholic Church for an exorcism. At first, it was rejected because she had these mental health issues. So remember, they had this policy of checking first if you have mental health issues or any physical issues that might be causing this disturbed behavior. But finally, the local bishop approved, and she suffered, and I use the word suffered, truly, a series of exorcisms. The Bishop Joseph Stengel approved the exorcisms, but ordered total secrecy. Now, we are big fans of transparency here on the show because, why it got to be a secret, right? And so there was a couple of priests that got involved. One priest, Ernst Alt, whom they met, on seeing her, declared that she didn't look like an epileptic and that he did not see her having seizures. What does an epileptic look like?
Yeah, that's number one. Plus, these fits are random.
She can't have one on cue to prove that you're an
Right.
epileptic. Okay, let me just have a fit for you.
Yeah,
It's bullshit, isn't it? It's complete fucking
basically.
bullshit. And again, she's been diagnosed by actual doctors as having this condition. They might not have been found an effective treatment for it, but she's been diagnosed by doctors and psychiatrists. So who are you, priest Ernst Alt, to decide that she doesn't have epilepsy, right? And so that was like part of the reason why he decided to go ahead with the exorcisms. And soon after the start of the exorcisms, Anneliese actually stopped eating. Her parents stopped consulting her doctors.
No.
Red flags, red flags, red flags, right? What did these exorcism sessions look like? They were 1 or 2 each week, lasting for up to 4 hours, and were performed for over a 10-month period, so between 1975 and 76. She went through 67 Catholic exorcisms in 1 year, in less than 1 year, and that was the year before her death. So she died in 1976. She was never cured, in quotation marks, of this possession, and she died of malnutrition and dehydration.
No.
They stopped her from having her treatments. They stopped consulting the doctors. She stopped eating. They didn't see any reason to bring her back to the doctors or have her put in a hospital or treated for not eating. They carried on with these exorcisms, which must have been torturous after a while, or after 5 minutes, to be honest. And so she died of malnutrition and dehydration.
So sad.
I know, it's so sad. Her parents and 2 priests were convicted of negligent homicide for this.
Good.
Yeah, fucking good.
Even in those days. Wow.
But how long do you think they got each in prison?
Oh.
6 months.
What?
Sorry, I didn't let you
6
guess.
months. 6 months.
I mean, they caused her death and they had plenty of opportunity to save her. It was completely avoidable, her death, and it's their fault. So
It's just so unnecessary.
several films are based on her story, such as the 2005 film, The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Emily Rose.
Yeah. And then 2 that I never heard of, the award-winning 2006 film Requiem.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Let me
Yeah.
write that down.
And then what sounds like more of a sort of documentary or something, because it's 2011, Anneliese, The Exorcist Tapes.
Oh, I've seen that one.
Oh, have you? Is it a
I've
film
seen
or?
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a film.
Yeah. So basically, in conclusion, after going through all the different types of exorcisms and pulling out some of the most horrendous cases of them and the most well-known ones, my conclusion is that I'm more scared of exorcisms than demonic possession.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a little request. If I am ever possessed, or if anyone thinks I'm possessed, can you please make sure that I'm not taken back to my roots and given a Catholic exorcism?
No.
I want maybe, I want the Tibetan Buddhist
Yes.
exorcism.
I was going to say that. So I'll come around, I'll bring some feathers and some crystals and just say nice mantras, some motivational speeches.
Yeah.
And that's about it. Maybe burn some incense.
Yeah. I'm going to end this episode by asking you, what is your favorite horror film?
There are so many.
Oh, okay. So imagine someone was like, I've never seen a horror film. Which one should I watch to get me started? What would you recommend?
Depends what you like. There's different categories. There's horror thrillers. There's horror gory.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I give you 2?
Yeah. You
okay,
can give me as many as you want, actually.
Okay.
We do what we want. Ain't no rules. I'm not going to accuse you of being demonically possessed and exorcise you.
Favorite franchise, recent franchise, probably The Conjuring, because I like the fact that there's bits of religion, Catholic. There was the nun as well. It was possessed nun. And I like it because it's always like, this was based on true events. So there's kind of like a tiny bit of history within there. Yeah. And The Conjuring is all about, possessions. So possessions of people, but also possessions of, what do you call it? When they go into an actual thing, like a doll or an actual
still possessed.
cup.
Yeah.
So, Conjuring, that probably did suck me up, which I liked. What else? I watched, you know what? All-time favorite. The original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes, I have to admit, that might be one of mine too.
It's just like
perfect.
It is, and it sounds really terrible. Like, you must be really messed up to have enjoyed that film. It's just perfect. The gore, the ladies just falling down, the whole psychological thing of, if you were in that movie, you would just be like, what the fuck do I do?
I would do a shit. I would probably just kill myself so that I could do it painlessly, so that I wouldn't be his victim.
Yeah, just like, get it over and done with.
Yeah.
Lady, pass me some paracetamols. I'll just do it myself. I can't just be doing this and watch you kill everyone. I'm gonna add a number 3.
Yeah.
Top three. House of 1,000 Corpses.
Oh.
Have you seen that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Rob Zombie.
Yeah.
Again, masterpiece. Yeah. Fantastically shot. Great cast. A bit of demonic things. So yeah, those are my top 3.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me today about exorcisms and demons and horror films and so forth. Can you, before we go, tell people where they can find you?
Yes, and thank you for having me. You can find me all over the internet at Hey Sareta. That's HeySareta, and I've got a pretty website, saretafontaine.com.
And all of those links will be in the show notes anyways. Yeah, check her out. She's fabulous.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. And we're going to see you next week when you're going to be presenting a topic to me.
I can't wait. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
If you want lots more fun, moon info, and all things spiritual, plus our merch shop, please visit our website, weknewthemoon.co.uk. And if you want even more, head over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/WeKnewTheMoon, and check out some of our bonus content. We're also on Facebook and Instagram at we.new.the.moon, and we're also on Twitter at WeKnewTheMoon1. See you next time!